Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite vice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
Breaking news. Breaking news. If you want any breaking news in Hamilton, you follow this man on Twitter, Joey Coleman. Welcome to the Laircast.
Thank you for having me again.
Well, you know what, Joey? You show up, just before the show, and you come in and you say, Laura, by the way, you're going to have to find a new night for the O show because council's moved their meeting to Tuesdays. Before I ever heard from before our producer, in all fairness, even knew about it, you have the scoop on that. You saved my family from a hurricane one night, or a tornado. No, you guys are laughing, I swear to God. We were about to go to bed, right? And I thought I'd check Twitter before I went to sleep. And Joey Coleman's like, there's a tornado coming to the East Mountain of Hamilton. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking? Like, I hadn't heard it on the news or anything. So we went downstairs with our kids, and the tornado hit a school near our house. And if it were not for Joey Coleman, who knows, right? So you're back in the Lair, Joey. You were here the first time because you're so interesting. But you're back in the Lair this time because you're taking this breaking news. It's not just an ability that you have to sniff out stories. It's your sheer dedication to get them. Like when you showed me your tablet and you said you had it set to wake you up if there was a certain alarm fire in the middle of the night, then you hop on a bus and go cover it and nobody pays you for that. I mean, that's dedication. So you are taking this knack for news, this dedication to covering Hamilton's breaking stories, and you're starting your own not-for-profit Joey Coleman media kingdom, whatever. Tell me about it.
Well, first of all, I am starting it, but I don't see it as a kingdom or even as my own, in the sense that Hamilton has a news gap. We all acknowledge that. And as a Hamiltonian, I love covering stories in Hamilton. My journalism has taken me around the world. I worked for Maclean's. I worked for the Globe and Mail. I had a really nice high-profile position at Maclean's, full-page ads, advertising, my writing. And I loved every minute of it. But I spent more time away from Hamilton. Even though I lived in Hamilton and I commuted to Toronto, I started to really miss the city and feel disconnected from the city. Mm-hmm. And so I came back. I've been doing journalism here for 2 years, and I'm seeing that we need a public service journalism outlet. And I'm not the type to sit there and say, somebody should do this. Right. I'll step up and do it. So I've been crowdfunding, and I've been really fortunate. A lot of Hamiltonians believe in the idea, believe in me, and I'm really humbled by that. So I'm working towards that crowdfunding goal of $10,000. I'm over 5,000 now. It's amazing. And in terms of dedication, I'm just the type that if I miss a story, I feel that I failed. Yeah. And I love covering the news, and I'm not the type to sit at home and tweet, why isn't anybody covering this story?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you actually show up, and there have been incidences where you have maybe shown up other paid journalists because you go to things that we would think they were physically attending, right? You go to meetings of council, you go to other public events, and you sometimes are one of the only media there. And I've seen exchanges about, well, I'm not trying to do your job, you should do your own job, going back and forth between you and the Spectator, and you've had some exchanges with CBC Hamilton. So, am I saying that politely? The peanut gallery is snickering over there. Yeah, there have been some exchanges. I'm trying to be politically correct. It's the first Laircast of the night. Give me some time. Yeah, that's right. Like I said, it's the first one of the evening.
As I always say, I'm just doing my thing. But
who else does your thing? Like Dr. Savigny, if you don't mind. There's a microphone right behind your head there. You're a professor of communications. Have you ever seen an example like this before of a citizen who's so prolific in their news gathering and dissemination and so relied on that they're actually able to mobilize a public service media?
You know what? Joey's unique in Canada.
Is he really?
I think so. Yeah, and I haven't seen any real competition to citizen journalism on this scale and dedication to his hometown. No.
Because isn't it usually citizen journalists or journalists? What's that? Al Franken.
Yeah. Well, sure, but in Canada, though, yeah.
But isn't it usually citizen journalists do their thing in part-time and then feed it into an existing media? Sure. Whereas Joey, you've created your own following. He's almost like his own broadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, Joey, you're not trying trying to make money at it either. You're just trying to break even, you know, which that's pretty unique too.
For sure.
Well, I've been very fortunate that I enjoyed supporting my hometown, and I was very lucky when I got hired by Maclean's and the Globe and Mail that they hired me as a journalist, but let me continue to innovate. And I think the great thing about what I've been doing is that because of the open data, open government aspect of my beliefs and what I've put out there, I haven't been hired by any of the mainstream media in Hamilton. And it's forced me to be even more innovative. And it's.
Do you think you should have been hired by the new CBC when they came to town?
Yes, I do. I applied, and if you apply, you naturally believe you should have been hired. They made a choice. It's an interesting model. They made a choice. There was only a handful of Hamiltonians interviewed. A lot of really good Hamiltonians didn't get interviews, and they decided not to hire anyone local. I mean, I find that peculiar, especially when I read the job descriptions. But we'll see how that works out. I mean, I think that when I read it, because I'm so in my city, and I read stuff like the military building on James Street instead of the armories, it bothers me. And I get a real sense in the community, and seeing the discussion last week that a lot of other people are feeling that way. But again, I'm just doing my thing. I want to see
discussion referring to the Raise the Hammer article about where they're at 6 months in, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to see CBC succeed. We need CBC to succeed in Hamilton because it does have the ability to bring in national resources that nobody else can.
Right.
And it has a lot of potential. The future is digital, and it'd be a huge loss to Hamilton and to the nation if CBC is not able to succeed digitally.
Well, let me ask you this question, Rob. Since you brought in the satellite truck from CBC National to cover Supercrawl, would you have been here if CBC Hamilton wasn't here?
I'm not sure, because that could have been the first. It was a strange day. It caught me doing something else. So the one thing I can say about that day is that was the first time in I don't know how long, maybe ever for me, that I actually heard somebody say on a national newscast, if you're in Southern Ontario, downtown Hamilton is the place to be. Now,
oh yeah, that's awesome.
But
That is awesome.
How I
round of glass clinking. Hey, cheers.
But if it wasn't really, it's possible. I've been to like pumpkin festivals in towns that I've forgotten about.
But
it's
CBC's never covered the crawl before.
not the
national.
crawl. No.
And you parked in front of CBC Hamilton's location.
Yes.
And so I'm saying, was the invitation fed up from Roger Gillespie to the national desk?
No, that was Toronto down, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, they really wanted, because it was an open door to the community, and it was a real make sure the community knows they're welcome. So it was a big push to.
Well, maybe we'll find out. We can ask Roger sometime whether or not they needed to be here to get that kind of coverage, because if that's an example of that national reach, right, that they were able to bring in, that was excellent. You know, the weather, every time they did the weather all morning, they said, go to the Supercrawl in Hamilton. It was awesome.
Yeah, and that's great for our city, and that's exactly why we need CBC in the city.
Yeah.
Is because of that ability to reach nationally that is so unique to the CBC.
So how do you feel about, you know, I don't know if you told me or if I heard from other people, let's say that the Spectator watches your Twitter feed or has an awareness of what you're up to. Do you feel like you're working for media in town without them compensating you for it?
No, because I'm doing my thing. I'm doing this because I want to. There are times where I am annoyed that I spend many, many hours or days working on information, and they don't even retweet me, or they don't even credit me. And I think that that's a decent thing to do. But I can't.
Is it partly because people are still learning the rules of social media?
No, because they'll credit other media outlets.
Oh, okay.
They'll credit each other. It's a never acknowledge what I do because they do see it as competition. And that's fine. I've learned that one thing I can never do is worry about what they're doing or how they are reacting to me. My readers are what matters to me.
Yep.
And I also do this because I felt there was a news hole in Hamilton. And if they're able to provide more public information because of my work, that's great.
So I have to ask you the obvious question. How do you feed yourself?
I do some freelance work on the side, some
Okay.
consulting as well outside of Hamilton, and that pays the bills.
And the reason why I asked Joey is because my assumption was in this model that you're creating that, Dr. Sevigny said it's a break-even model. It's a not-for-profit model. But does that break-even include some kind of compensation for you?
Yeah, it includes me being able to pay my rent, pay my bills, and
Okay, I feel better about it then, because if it was just for your equipment and it was still Joey at large, at some point you have to take care of yourself, right?
no, and I mean I'm very fortunate that I live in Beasley. I don't have to pay much in rent. I keep my expenses low. I'm still living the student lifestyle. Passion can get you very far,
Yeah, no
and
doubt about it.
that's
That's an Oprah Winfreyism. Follow your passion and the money follows you. So how are you going about getting from the 5 to the 10, and what happens when you hit 10?
Well, it's now reaching out to a lot of people, telling them $32 is going to make a huge difference. The amount of people who follow me on Twitter and communicate with me regularly, if each one of those people who engages with me regularly gave 32, we have no problem reaching the 10,000. The 10,000 gets the equipment and the tech that I need to take it to the next level. And from there, the new site I'm building is going to be able to offer some advertising to small business.
Okay, good.
I put out a daily newsletter every morning, which CBC acknowledged was the right model, and they're looking to do the same thing, which will be another challenge for me, is how do I continue to sustain when others are doing exactly what I'm doing.
Well, imitation is the highest form of flattery, right?
Yeah.
And incredibly annoying when it's in business.
But you know what? I look at it that it forces me to innovate even more.
Sure.
And there was one, I cannot remember the comment on Raise the Hammer, but I had noted that the day I stop innovating is the day I need to quit.
Right.
Because that's when you become complacent.
Absolutely.
And so
Competition is good for the innovative soul, if you will.
and the more competition, the better. The goal longer term is to build so right now it's not a nonprofit, it's not incorporated, it's me.
Right.
But get to that incorporation with the board, all the stuff that has to happen to build it. And then Hamilton has our own locally owned, locally managed, locally driven nonprofit journalism outlet. And I was asked, well, wouldn't that be removing the need for CBC? No, we're a big city. We can have more than one public broadcaster.
So on that point, is there a model that you're following? Is there somebody else that has done the same?
No, there isn't. I'm looking very much, though, towards the NPR PBS model.
Okay.
I really enjoy listening to NPR radio.
Yeah, because when I brought it up, Rob said, our producer said it was like, you said PBS, right? When I brought up what Joy was doing, you said it sounded like a PBS kind of model?
Yeah, I love NPR. I have an app that shuffles NPR stations. And at night, I'll just pick a random NPR station, no matter where it is. The content's locally driven. It's the local accent. It's the local voice. They have the national news, which you need, but it's always very locally driven. And I really enjoy that about NPR.
So let me throw something unpleasant at you. The process of incorporating and getting a steering committee or an advisory board or the governance model, all that stuff I've had the privilege of doing from the ground up with an organization. And it is a tremendous amount of work, and not just a tremendous amount of work, but it brings in politics, small p politics, and power struggles, and everybody wants, it's a good dynamic process, but it's not a process that would allow you to do that and do the kind of news coverage that we're reliant on you for. So how does Joey find the time resources to do both?
Well, that's where I bring in a lot of other people. There have been a lot of people that have approached me, leaders in the community, that have said they want to be part of this because they agree that the news hole needs to be filled. And it's relying a lot upon other people. The reason I have to do this is because what I'm doing right now is not sustainable.
Right.
And I'm the first to admit that. At some point, I start burning out. I can't keep, going.
There's only so many chocolate bars you can eat, Joey.
Yeah, and
I'm saying.
at some point, I want to.
No, really, they were at some tech thing one weekend, right? And all the tweets that were coming out were about the chocolate bars they were eating. I'm like, are you guys doing? Yeah, I'm like, are you doing any work, or are you guys just having Coke and chocolate bars, right?
I will note that the chocolate bars were on top of a veggie platter.
Oh, okay.
So we had both. Now, the chocolate bars may have gone before the vegetables.
All I know is all the news I was getting out of that forum was your chocolate consumption.
Hackathons are very much that way.
Hackathon. There we are.
They're very social, and part of the fun is eating the food, drinking the pop.
So when you guys are hackathoning, are you acting as hacktivists? That's the one, right?
No,
Hacktivists.
because hacktivism I see as a term that's more towards a political goal.
Okay.
Whereas what we're doing is we're programming.
Okay.
And hackathon is the idea of you're just going until you get something produced. So we've had Dowsing, which was the Splashpad app. That was a hackathon product. One hackathon, we produced the Next Bus text message system that unfortunately the city of Hamilton was not interested in.
You would have loved that, eh, Rob? A next bus text message?
We right now are working on something for ice rinks. We're hoping we have winter this year. And it's just the idea of we come in on a Friday and we say, okay, what things are we hearing from our fellow citizens that need a fix?
So what do you think about the city spending X amount of dollars to build a new website?
I think that if it's spent well, that's what we need. We cannot go cheap on our website. We didn't go cheap on our website last time, but it looks like we did. And we need to have a process where we have enough funding that I want to see the new city website so advanced that a fouling incident at a pool, the lifeguard can go into that office, click a few buttons, and anybody who subscribes to alerts about open swims at that pool now knows that pool's closed for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that means that you have to have the money aside to train
Yes.
all those staff. And hopefully every staff member in the organization that has any public-facing operation,
Wow.
that when something happens, they don't have to go to their manager to inform the public, that they're able to click a few buttons.
Yeah, I would just tweet
people-
Joey Coleman, and then the whole city would find out instantly. Can't we just save the money? Yeah, I know.
But-
No, when I come across a traffic accident or something, I'm like, Joey, there's a traffic accident right here. I know he'll take care of it from there.
See, website. That hasn't been decided yet. See, part of what I'm trying to do, though, is right now I'm a middleman. A lot of my day is spent on relaying information, and can we eliminate the middleman? Because if I'm not relaying information, I'm not going to sit at home and go, okay, job's done, I'm going to...
But do people even appreciate that kind of instantaneous sort of micro updates are even possible?
I think that more and more they're seeing it.
Yeah.
Are
other cities working at that level of effectiveness? Efficiency?
Vancouver is.
Yeah.
There's some cities in the United States that are.
See, because I can see the city of Hamilton, and I don't know how you feel about this, Dr. Sevigny, but I can see the city of Hamilton hearing that and saying, well, if we allow every lifeguard access to the city's website to post updates without somehow filtering it through a bureaucrat to approve the message, right? I mean, it makes total sense to do it, but I can see some people fearing the lack of control.
But you see, there is control because what you give them access to do is to fill out a report, which is pool is fouled, closed for 3 hours. That's what they do.
Right.
And then on the back end of your server, it takes that and puts that out to the public in a pre-formatted message.
But I'm just saying the accuracy of the information being distributed, who checks that?
Well, there's the potential that one of your lifeguards could decide as a prank to put...
I'm just envisioning a city response. Just what would block this? They would think that it's...
that way, but there's a point where we have to have faith in people. We have staff at the city with a lot of responsibility that could be irresponsible, but that doesn't stop us from giving them responsibility. We are talking about lifeguards in this example
I'm all
who
for
are...
the model you're suggesting. I'm just trying to think of what the roadblocks might be.
Yeah.
And the idea that any of the 45,000 people who work for the city or whatever could, I don't know if it's that many, but let's just take a number, could go onto the city website and post an update without someone vetting the content.
Well, you set it up so that each position has limited access. So the lifeguard, all that they can do is stuff related to the pool, which would be foulings or closures. They're not updating that the program's changing. It's those sort of situations that come up where citizens come into the rec center and they go, I just drove an hour, my swimming lessons are closed.
Right.
Why didn't somebody tell me? So
can I ask you a question? What can we expect as a consumer of this new venture? What are we going to get from it? Are we going to get breaking news? Are we going to get, city stuff like we're talking about? Are we going to get investigative journalism? I mean, what does the format look like, or is it completely open?
Well, it is completely open in that I'm willing to pivot based upon what needs to be done. But the goal is to live stream and record every single city meeting,
Okay.
including subcommittees.
And those aren't done by the city for
They're
archival
not done by the
purposes?
city. Putting up agendas. So, for example, our Accountability and Transparency Subcommittee does not post its agendas or minutes. And I have to request them. I have to request them before every
request to get your transparency subcommittee to tell you what they're doing.
So I spend an hour or two every Wednesday emailing individual clerks asking for subcommittee agendas.
Wow, that's amazing.
And they trickle in throughout the next couple days. So
do you know that? Did you follow Mayor Ford's? Do you follow Mayor Ford on Twitter?
No, I do not.
So Mayor Ford's office in Toronto tweets out agendas for every meeting, every subcommittee all day long. I mean, obviously, Mayor Ford's not sitting there doing it, but the mayor of Toronto is saying there's a subcommittee coming, and I always find it fascinating. I know more about the inner workings of Toronto city politics than I do Hamilton because of the way they tweet.
The political conversation in Hamilton is heated because we don't have a lot of the information before it hits council, and council is very much theatrics. And that's just the nature everywhere.
No,
I mean,
shut up. I've never noticed that, Joey. Come on.
But the work that gets done is quite amazing at the subcommittee level.
Right.
I'm often very impressed by these councillors that you do not hear at council,
Yes.
but you hear at subcommittees.
Yeah.
A great example of where I'm learning is I went to the Agricultural Affairs Subcommittee a couple weeks ago, and it was the first time they had a reporter there ever. And I mean, when I looked at the agenda, it seems a bit dry. They're talking about zoning issues, grass cutting, and Ontario Farmers Association, I believe it's called OFA.
The fact that you volunteered to go to that meeting, Joey, I have all the respect for you in the world.
ATVs as well, ATVs on rural property. But what I got out of it was an understanding of the issues of the rural citizen that I did not understand before. I sat there for 3 hours listening, but there was good substantive discussion. Brenda Johnson, who's a rookie counselor, who I see more as an urbanite, actually has such an amazing grasp of rural issues that her and Rob Pasuta are equals on rural issues.
So let me ask you a question. Does council get a bad rap because of the theatrics we witness once a week on Cable 14 and in the paper subsequently and before and during? Or is it because there's actually a lot of work being done on subcommittees that they may chair or they may be involved in? It's just that the theater of it, we think that they're not as serious?
Distract. They rightfully are getting criticized for many decisions that they've made. Okay. But the citizen is more cynical about City Hall than they need to be because they're not seeing that day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And they're not able to guide the political process because by the time that a citizen becomes aware of it through the newspaper, it's already happened or it's already done. And when it's at subcommittee, that's when it can change. That's when people can write letters to their counselor and get involved.
So your hope is to expose the subcommittee agendas so that people can weigh in before it becomes one of these big explosive scandals like we get every week.
Part of the problem with journalism, and journalism is in trouble, but the thing is, it's not the internet that's killing journalism. If you go back to the early 90s, layoffs were already occurring, subscription rates were starting to drop.
Yeah.
People were disappointed in journalism then. The internet came along and may have accelerated that, but the problem that I see for journalism is it came along and it gave journalists some other force to point to as the problem.
Well, here's my question then. It seems as though journalists are becoming commentators. For instance, there's a journalist from the Hamilton Spectator. Half the tweets that come out seem to have opinion to me. And I don't know where the line is. I think Dr. 70 and I might have even talked about this in his Lair cast. I can't figure out where the line is between are you reporting this or are you giving your opinion on it? And even what they select to retweet seems to be towards a certain opinion, And so I don't have a real issue with that as long as they know that they're doing it and that we're aware that they are allowed to comment as well as report. See what I'm saying?
I think that journalists need to, the view from nowhere doesn't work because we're all human. I have bias and I'm very open about it. I let people know, here's how I feel.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is we need to give people the source documents. We need to give them our audio. When we interview a politician, put the entire audio up. I have had many times where I've put raw documents and audio up, and people have put in my comment section, I think you missed this.
Is this why people don't respect journalists as much? Because they parse to the point of excluding the broader context, which is sometimes invaluable. You know, like, let's take the debates, and the final presidential debate is airing the night that we're doing this Laircast. People are watching these debates in, you know, huge numbers, partly because on the campaign trail the speeches are scripted. On the ads, it's obviously highly produced. The only opportunity you get to see a fraction of real information coming out in real time, you know, in the heat of the moment is on these debates. It's like we're craving a direct access to honesty, or to, even if they're spinning it, at least we're seeing them spin it in the heat of the moment.
I think that there's a disconnect, not a distrust. Okay. I think it's a disconnect. That's the bigger challenge, is that we're not as well connected with our readership as we can be. Mm-hmm. It's no longer a one-way conversation. It had to be for a long time because there just wasn't the ability for people to be as engaged as they can be now. And I think that we also, as journalists, we need to be willing to say we get it wrong.
Well, you do that. And the two-way conversation that you're engaged in, I've noticed that other prominent journalists in our community aren't on Facebook or Twitter actively. They don't seem to be exposed to that feedback the way that, I mean, some are. Certainly Susan Claremont is, Emma is, but there are others that I would expect to be out there constantly generating those kind of dialogues, and I don't see them.
It's a challenge. I know that, well, for example, when I joined Twitter, I didn't want to join Twitter. I actually resisted it very much. And
didn't you create the ham on hashtag?
I did, but I joined Twitter.
All right, whatevs.
No, well, please.
What else don't you want to do, Joey? I want to see how the world's going to change.
Please allow me to explain. So I'm working at Maclean's, and I'm producing numerous articles a day. Mm-hmm. I'm writing features for the magazines that are thousands of words, taking photos. And I'm on this hamster wheel every day where if I fall behind, it's near impossible for me to catch up. And I see Twitter as just another thing that has to be added onto that.
Yeah.
And so I ignored it for the longest time. And it was my competitor joined Twitter. The Globe and Mail took a corporate account. And I went, okay, I better cyber squat on my name. And
that's what they call what you do, Mike, cyber squatting. There's a name for it I did not know.
And then a couple weeks...
Oh, hey, Martinez, I didn't see you.
A couple weeks later, I'm having dinner with a girl I'm dating, and I talk about, they've got Twitter going over there. I don't know what this is all about. I don't have time for it. And it turns out that this person I'm dating had joined Twitter, one of the first people to join Twitter, and explained it to me. And because I had to join it, and when I do something, I don't do it half. I'm fully in. I was very fortunate. And then once I did it for a couple months, I realized, wow, this is really great, because I had my comment section. And my comment section on Maclean's was very clean. A lot of people would engage with me there. But I found Twitter was even better because I didn't need my desktop. I could do it right off my phone.
That's fantastic.
And it was instantaneous. But it's the challenge is learning, feeling comfortable learning. When I was at Maclean's, my managing editor and editor had my back. There were times where I did things that the executive editors would not agree with, and my managing editor would be that buffer. So I had that ability to go out and take that risk and feel confident in it.
Well, and Twitter is incredibly risky, but if you love communicating, and I know Dr. Sevigny, you're on Twitter. Renee's, I'm seeing you on it now. Deirdre's getting more active on it. Aaron's on it. Martinez is getting more active on it, and Rob is too. Twitter is, not only is it instantaneous dissemination of information and opinion and feedback, but it's the access. And Rob knows what I'm going to bring up now, because there are people in this world that I admire. One of them is Chef Gordon Ramsay. He's been a hero of mine for ages for all kinds of reasons. I freaking love Gordon. Okay, like I went. Oh, that, and the fact that, he grew up in a rough household. He was a soccer player who got injured or cut or whatever, recreated his career. His brother had a heroin addiction. His dad was a rough alcoholic. He made something of himself. He works his butt off. He flips businesses over. He helps so many people. I'm a huge fan. Went to his restaurant in New York City on a pilgrimage, right? Like, love the dude. And so, I tweet often to people who you wouldn't normally ever have access to, but you don't expect response. So when he retweeted me this morning and then followed me, I was like, oh my God, holy shit, Rob! I'm like, Gordon Ramsay's following me! And we're like, well, he's got 1 million followers and he follows 5,000 and I'm one of the 5,000. And maybe it'll only last for a few hours because he'll be like, what the hell is this Lair cast? I don't want to hear about this all night. But the ability to connect, even in a virtual way, even for a moment in time, with somebody who's, a world you admire is super cool. And you can't get that anywhere else, I don't find, but Twitter.
It's great for connecting people, connecting information, and I absolutely love the tool. I mean, I tell you a story of where I didn't want to join it. I keep saying to myself, I'm like, geez, I noticed it a year before I joined. I could be one of those few people that, when you look at their profile, joined in 2007 instead of 2008. And I, always...
Everybody do that. You look at how many followers they have and when they joined. And it's so competitive. Or just for people like me, I don't know. So, Joey, what do we call this thing that you're doing? Because, I'm a branding person. I need a name so I can talk about it.
Public service journalism because it's very...
No, but your particular venture. So when I say to people, have you donated to Joey's thing, what do we call it?
I'm still working on what the name would be because that's, you have
Any
to get it right.
suggestions from the Peanut Gallery?
I do.
Other than Joey's thing? Joey's thing has some appeal. But
I am not contributing to his thing.
You better find a name before he gets to his target, that's all.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You'll be at 10,000 and it'll be Joey's thing as $10,000. Martinez, you're
making
a brilliant man.
change.
Any ideas? What do we call it?
I don't want to reveal because, well, actually, this will come up a few days. I own the domain hamont.ca.
Yes.
That's where I'm moving all of the journalism to.
So you're kind of pulling the Twitter thing in.
Yeah, well, I bought the domain many years ago when I created the hashtag because that way it could not be misused.
So is this like breaking news on the Laircast?
Yeah.
I'm going to sneak
yeah,
off
I've
and
used
tweet it. It's already being tweeted by the Peanut Gallery.
Great, because right now it's a development site. People are going to go to it and wonder what's going.
It's the Tweet It Gallery.
People are going to wonder what's going on because it's
soon,
complete development.
Hamont.ca.
But that's all good.
See, this is a perfect example of citizen journalists. Look at all the citizen journalists over there.
I've been using it for a good cause, though.
Yeah, I've been using the domain whenever there's been a missing person because it's very easy to share.
Yeah.
And that's it's actually become interesting that the police, when they put out missing persons alerts now to the media, they'll usually call me as well just to make sure that I'm getting it if it's after hours. So Thanksgiving Day, there was a missing person alert put out, and I was on a Barton bus going to my grandmother's for lunch, and I wasn't in a position that I could update my website right on the bus because it's packed. I'm standing, so I hopped off, sat at a bench, updated my website about this missing person information, then got back on the bus.
Joy, I'm listening to you, and aren't you thinking like someone should be documenting, as in documentary, his process before it gets too far ahead? Don't you think? Like, how can you not?
Did you start yelling "Stop the bus"?
No.
But I'm just saying, if ever I've heard of a documentary that should be getting filmed, it's this one, because you're not so far into the process yet that the story has been told.
I'm keeping notes of everything that I do, and one of the goals with what I'm doing...
Are you self-documenting, putting the camera in your face and saying, I just hopped off the... No, I'm serious.
Well, you know what, I think one day libraries are going to compete for the Joey Coleman archives.
Yeah, well, I'm being told... So the guy who did the documentary about...
I did have one friend who wanted to come along for a day, and at this point I've turned it down just because I mix my private and personal life so much in terms of my day. And I do try to have some private moments.
Give it some thought, because the guy who just won a ton of awards for that documentary, which we haven't seen yet, Sharkwater, he went around the world, filmed himself, narrated it. He got some critics saying it was too much about him, but he ended up winning, I think, an Oscar for it. So I'm just saying, like, document it as you go.
A site that I wish I could remember the domain off the top of my head was when I was in Doha, Qatar for McLean's. I sat in this Iranian candy merchant shop, and this Iranian candy merchant and I are chatting about Toronto. He has a lot of relatives in Toronto. Thrilled to have a Canadian in his shop. And this gentleman comes into the shop, and the greeter, the owner hugs him. And this gentleman is from California and has been flying his Cessna around the world. Wow. And it's been really cool to see how that person documents. So I am taking notes of everything that I do.
But take visual notes. Take camera with your video camera, because no one's going to read all that.
Okay, you make a good point.
Am I wrong? Unless you're doing it in 140 characters.
But also what I'm trying
I'm just trying to think of...
I don't want to read that.
I'm thinking of the end. Listen to you. I sent you an email from a very powerful person on something pretty salacious the other day, and you're like, I ain't reading that much.
Yeah, because it was...
No, but my point is you weren't going to read it, right? Because it was too long.
No,
so,
but it was like, oh, Joey, take these notes.
Whoever's the last
I did not tell him to take
when
notes.
she's had a few more to drink, make sure that you find out what that email says.
Candy Crowley, check the record. I did not say, Joey, take notes. I said, Joey, document this visually in a way that people will want to see it. Nobody's going to want to read about you jumping off a bus. People will want to see, I just jumped off the bus, though, because we're lazy.
But see, at that point...
Yes! Because I'm speaking to the modern consumer. We want it easy packaged into video. Are you going to read the Joey Coleman archives? Yes. Okay, you're committed to it. Renee, you make sure 3 hours a night of Joey's day.
But here's the thing. Then the story becomes about me and not what I'm doing.
But this is the thing with the guy who did Shark Water, is that people said that, but it ended up influencing like 52 nations to change their policies on shark soup.
Well,
so I'm saying don't take that as a rule.
A lot of what I'm doing is putting out how I do my journalism.
Okay.
I never hide how I do things. And I always invite my competition to do the same things. And I've always said, because I've had times where people have tried to copy what I'm doing, and I've said, great, I'm moving on to something else.
Yeah.
And what I want
when Dr. 70 says nobody in Canada is doing what you're doing, I'm just sitting here feeling like we should be documenting it. That's what I'm saying.
And so what I'm doing is the backpack that I'm putting together, that's my broadcast satellite truck, I'm going to document exactly what the equipment is, how you put it together.
His broadcast satellite truck is a backpack.
You go, brother.
And
you go, Al Franken.
See, Rob's, there's no threat to what Rob does because Rob's truck is so much more reliable than a backpack. It has so many redundancies.
Well, you were explaining to me that his truck has its dedicated satellite signal. Yes. Whoops. So nobody else can distort it or steal from it or whatever.
Well, see, the problem I'm going to have in the event of a major incident is bandwidth, because the cell phone networks will be overloaded.
Right.
So I may not be able to go live because of just the amount of use of the cell towers.
Well, don't feel badly. When Via Rail had their derailment in Burlington, nobody else locally went live either for hours, Joey. So.
But CBC's satellite truck that Rob drives, or Rob's on, will have its own dedicated satellite feed, and that's important. And that, again, gets to why we need CBC in Hamilton, because as much as I'm doing, there are limitations that CBC, with its large budget, does not have.
Well, Joey, before you vault to superstardom without trying to, any questions for Mr. Coleman from the Peanut Gallery?
Ooh, I have a question.
Ooh.
Joey, if one of the big, media outlets in town offers you a job, would you take that job?
Ooh, good question.
Since you seem to be a little pro, the average, broadcaster.
No, because I've already committed to doing what I'm doing, because I'm filling the gap. And I think that the gap is a result of the fact that our local media is not locally owned.
Comes to you and says, Joey, to wipe you out as competition, we'll give you $100,000 to have free reign on the city desk to go and follow stories and no more asking for money.
That's a very tempting offer, but the reality is that people have put their confidence in me. The people who are contributing are doing so. And
Joey Coleman, though, or are they going to follow, the Spectator because it's the Spectator?
Yeah. But the thing is that people are contributing to the idea that we need to fill the local news gap. And it's better for everyone if we end up with a locally controlled outlet.
So let me ask you specifically.
And I live in Hamilton. I have to live with the fact that if I did that, a lot of people would turn away from me and would be disappointed.
Oh, for sure.
And I would see that every day.
It would be Paula Deaning yourself.
You don't think you can present your view, though, working for one of them? If they give you the green light to do that, you think that... the way I look at it is it's...
But what happens when 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I go back to do my graduate degree and I'm not there anymore putting that viewpoint. And now we're still at the same situation we have now. We need to fill the local news gap.
You said that like 10 times. What is the gap? Define it for me. What are we missing?
Well, we don't have locally controlled media. All of our media is controlled out of Toronto in terms of ownership. We don't have a newspaper in the lower city anymore. The Hamilton News does not. The Bay Observer is only delivered to higher income demographics, and it's.
What about urban? Hey, we got the public.
We're not news.
Yeah, and they're only monthlies. They're not the dailies. They're not. There's nobody else at City Hall subcommittees. There's nobody else.
What's catch?
Catch is at committees and at council, and Catch is amazing, but they're not live streaming the subcommittees.
So I have a question for you, Joey. How do we fix CBC Hamilton? Everybody was so excited. You know this city. I'm learning about this city, but we all know CBC Hamilton has some problems, right? In your humble opinion, how do we fix it?
We fix CBC by listening to Hamilton. If I had the ability to change something CBC is doing, I would have the executives from Toronto down and hold the town hall. It would be, what does Hamilton want? And
Didn't Roger do that? I mean, he went out and met individually with a bunch of stakeholders, asked
he
them.
met people.
Wilson, I mean, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
people that
But
are local.
he told people what he was doing. It wasn't a town hall where people could have a frank discussion.
Well, he came here, and he asked for my time. We sat in these chairs one Tuesday morning or something for like 2 hours. He let me give all my ideas to him. He said that he wanted to get out of the newsroom and walk around and meet people in the neighborhood and be that kind of journalist. So I'm saying, like, it might not have been a town hall, but he did it with myself and a whole bunch of other people. So there was some effort
They asked me what I thought, and I gave them a lot of ideas.
Right, as did I.
And there were a few stories that were taken and their bylines put on them, but the ideas, the underlying idea of connecting with the community, doing some sort of open data event, those types of things, they weren't there. When you read how people are reacting to CBC and how CBC is reacting to the criticism that people are putting on Raise the Hammer, it's very defensive from them. And there's this disconnect, and it needs to be solved. And that means that they've got to sit down for a couple hours and just hear people. Not even a two-way conversation, but hear what Hamilton wants, and then be prepared to respond to that. I think that journalism has to be local. I read a great piece by a journalism professor in the United States a couple months ago, which said nicely delivered. But wait,
Favorite peanut gallery.
Yes.
Nothing gets past Deirdre.
but here's the thing. Wait, you haven't heard what the piece said. And the piece, there was a really good line in the piece that said, the problem with journalism outside of the major metropolitan areas is that the reporters are not local. The first chance they have a 3-day weekend, they're out of the city. And that is a problem for journalism in general, because our model has become that you work in a small town not because you want to be there, but because you want to move up to the big city. And the second...
The same thing. I went to CBC Windsor on my eventual path, I thought at the time, to go to Toronto. I would bolt as soon as my shift was done. I'd come back to Hamilton. And then when I'd go back to our assignment meetings and I had to pitch stories, the other reporters who lived in town were like, well, I was at the baseball game the other day for my son and I heard so-and-so talking about this plant closing. I had none of that grassroots
You need
information.
to have a nice mix of local reporters who really want to be in the city and they're not looking to leave the city, and people who want to move up. Because for Hamilton, it would be amazing, and it has been, that we've had a lot of talent go through CHCH and build their careers in Hamilton and remain connected to our city.
On this, Dr. Sevigny asked you, how would you fix CBC Hamilton? I'm hearing your answers being, have an open community dialogue forum, bring in some of the brass from Toronto, which suggests to me that you kind of want to leapfrog over Roger, because why do you need to bring in his bosses?
I think that the decisions are being made in Toronto.
Oh, sorry, we got hands up over here.
Can I just please say about CBC Hamilton that I forget that they're there.
Yeah.
And as somebody who engages and tries to frequently get coverage for my anti-poverty stuff or queer stuff or whatever, they have approached me 3 times. I've been, they've come and done stories with their initiative. And that was amazing. They gave us the best coverage for a City Hall Faith Leaders Forum on Poverty And I forgot to send them a press release because I've got my list of who I send it to, and it's not them. So I'm not as keen on the criticism.
But they're doing
so
a mental
far.
health forum just this week.
And that's one of the things I was
Yeah,
talking
for
to them about,
teenagers.
and hooking them up with queer students with
Yeah.
mental health issues.
So-
So, also don't forget that the CBC Hamilton is also, in Roger Gillespie's words, is it's an experiment. You know, I heard him say that on the radio station the other day. Like, this new model of what they're doing is a complete experiment. It's the first kind in Canada, you know, for this model. And yes, it's a work in progress, and you know, there's gonna be criticisms, but I mean, I think that's gonna grow what it is ultimately gonna become. Like, it's just not. It is what it is now, based on, you know, this experiment they're going through. So
one of the things I said on Twitter when I saw the Raise the Hammer critique article come out, and someone said that CBC hadn't responded, I said, well, we're at the 6-month point. At 1 year, it's an appropriate time to review, you know, but 6 months into an experiment, I certainly wouldn't want to be overly critiqued at that juncture. Are we being too hard on them too soon?
Yeah, I don't think you can gather an entire community in 6 months. There's so much going on. And I think they really do deliver a good message, a good medium. I mean, overall, the national brand's really great. I was excited when they launched in Hamilton. Yeah. I, like Deirdre, forget, because I've been here, you know, forever, that they're even here. Yeah. So maybe they just need to be in, you know, our faces a little bit more. But who knows? Maybe what they're providing to us comes from Joey Coleman, right? It's so fractured now, how we get information and messages, so who really knows?
Well, I know that they're on my site. When they start their day, especially on the weekend, I see on my site, first place they're visiting, one of the first is my site. And I'm not anti-CBC, and I'm getting a little concerned that people pigeonhole me as anti-CBC. I'm doing exactly what I did before CBC came.
Fuck you, Coleman.
CBC has chosen to go with the model that they're going. They made a choice that I was not best qualified to cover Hamilton. That's their decision to make. But
Joey Coleman Habitat Who's Who in Hamilton. Come on. Can't
What's
we do
that?
Habitat Who's Who that, you know, CBC used to do. We need that from Joey.
Well, and to Joey's credit, he came to the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting evening that we hosted at McMaster. And actually, one of my colleagues, Philip Savage, he did a pretty extensive study on CBC Hamilton. And it was interesting. I think there was a bit of a disconnect between him and the CBC executive on the study itself. But
so I want to be clear that I'm doing what I did before CBC came. Yes, I've been critical of them. There was a time where they found an obscure fashion blogger in the United States that said Hamilton had no fashion sense, and they brought it to attention. And I called them out. I said, that's not news.
Hamilton has a fashion sense.
And I'm not afraid to call...
Don't you set it with those great T-shirts that you just manufactured?
I think those are fashionable. Those are looking good.
I have one.
So
I know, dear. Everyone's going to have them before they leave tonight, except for Mike. You're not buying an SOS shirt, are you?
I just want to be very clear that I want to see CBC succeed. I put a lot of time and effort of my own time going to Toronto when they were training their staff in Toronto, saying, here's some stuff in Hamilton. I welcomed them with open arms. I tried to help them. They are going in a direction that's different than me, which is fine. We all can do that. And I want to see them succeed. They need to succeed.
I think we all need
But on
to.
the same note,
everybody needs to succeed.
I love covering Hamilton. And that's what I'm trying to continue to do. And that means that, I need to figure out a way of making that sustainable. And it won't be at the CBC. They've been very clear that they don't do what I do.
One of the reasons I invited you to this second Lair cast was because I wanted to, in our small part at Lair, because we're not for profit, you know, this cost me money to throw this party. Yeah. I don't make anything off of this. I know. I actually hide this from my financial advisor. And it's like they would not want me doing this. But you know, there are a lot of people in town who are doing unpaid gigs on a much smaller scale than you, just to get the conversation going. We do this out of a passion because we think that there's more conversation that needs to be had in town. And so when I see what you're doing and the level of dedication and time you put into it, Joey, I wanted in some small way for the Laircast to give you a little bit more publicity, if we can, around your $32 micro giving campaign, right?
Yeah. And the thing to remember too is when this is done, all the video goes online. everybody can use it. All the documents go online. The casino subcommittee is a good example where I finally got the agenda after working for days to get it, and I received that at 8:30 in the morning when I was going into a 3-hour meeting that I couldn't do anything with the agenda for 3 hours, and I put the agenda online, and CBC and the spec were able to pick it up and write stories. And that does not bother me at all because it means that the public's getting informed. I see myself, yes, I am seen as competition by the other outlets, but I don't ever get caught into competing with them.
I gotta be honest with you, I think you're in a class totally of your own, Joey. I don't think anyone sees you as, they might see some of the things you do as competitive to them, but I don't think anybody thinks that they're doing what you're doing. And kudos to you. It's awesome. Thanks for being the Laircast.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck with it, man. Awesome. Good job. Well done.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.